people would like to get paid when they, right? So, alrighty. And so, in terms of the business plan, or in terms of most business plans, I've left out the balance sheet on here because initially I was trying to get the balance sheet not included in the work that you're having to do, but I've sort of been encouraged to put it in. So 3, income statement, cash flow budget, and balance sheet. 3 big ones that we need to take a look at. The fact that I think you've said that everyone's already been through that makes our lives a whole lot easier. Okay. And again, this is what I've been talking about. This is what the companies are going to want to see, right? They're going to want to see some numbers, and they're going to understand their estimates. Oh, one thing I should say, if you ever decide to move to America, Silicon Valley, open up the next great tech start, and you go to a venture capitalist for money, figure out how much money you need, and then add 30%. And the reason I say that is because most venture capitalists take how much money you need and subtract 30%. For whatever reason. They just assume, okay, they're asking for this much money.
Ask more to
We
get
think,
less.
yeah, ask for more than you need. And for some reason, that 30% is like this magic number. They take 30% off or valuations, they like cut in half. Okay, so how many people here have never made an income statement before? Anyone never make an income statement? Okay. Very simple. You take your sales revenue, the money that comes in, you subtract the expenses, and bang, that's how much your profits are. So if you had 10,000 dinars come in, and it cost you 5,000 dinars in expenses, you still have a profit of 5,000. That seems pretty easy. What's all the fuss? Because it's a little more complicated than that, isn't it? Alrighty. If you haven't done this before, my friend, maybe this is the sort of thing we can walk through an example after. I do have an example here. Some of the terminologies, again, I've included them in the PowerPoint slide just as a point of reference. Basic flow. Now, what's interesting is in here is what I call the long version and the short version of the income statement. The income statement gets down to operating income, basically before you look at financing costs and taxes. That's probably fine for your business plan, okay? Especially because there's no real taxes here anyway, is there? Not yet. But again, if you do develop further business plans, and it's something we need to look into.
But if the country has no tax,
Yeah, you don't need to. So again, Miss Fatima, she sent me an example of a business plan that some students had done, and it just basically went down to operating income. Okay, so they're not going to go through and say, oh, where's the tax? Oh, where's the dividend payment? Oh, where's the financing? No, they're looking for an income statement, a basic income statement. As we have here, actually, that's not a simple income statement. That's a more complicated one. Let me go to the simple one first. We'll come back to the complicated one next. All right. So, anyone write the test last night? This would look very familiar. I mean, this wasn't on the test, but I'm thinking the idea. So, income at the top, how much money's come in. This is for a business doing a service, 94,000. Put all the numbers on the left, total is on the right. Though different countries, different companies will play around different examples. Here, you can see they've articulated what are all the examples of different expenses. This is good. This is useful. This is useful for companies to show, and for someone to try to understand, why is the company not making money? Well, let's see where they're spending it. These are the main expenses. Okay, as they've done here. And in this situation, you can see that 60,000 in total expenses, a profit of 30,000. Okay. Now, I've probably seen 20, 30, 40 different examples of income statements in my life where things like, I've never seen a company, before this example, put the total expenses here as opposed to down there. But when I was looking for a little clip art from the internet, this was the best example I found. Has anyone ever seen that before? They put the total expenses there as opposed to that 60,000 being down there. Kind of weird, but otherwise, I thought it was a good example.
it's confusing.
Yeah. Otherwise, I thought it was a good example. All right. Well, how do we learn best? We learn by doing. So, here's an example. Sales of 500,000, cost of goods sold of 300,000, other monthly expenses. What is the net income ladies and gentlemen?
Gross profit 200,000 minus all expenses. Can give you a table.
Great. So what's the answer? All right. I need to run out to the little boys' room very quickly. All right. I'll be gone for 1 or 2 minutes. When I come back, can you have the income statement finished? Huh?
Yeah, I will let them try.
Anyway, give it a chance. 30 seconds, your chance. 200,000, what we sometimes call gross profit, right? All righty. We then subtract the other expenses, and we get a net income of
159.
Great. Now, if this is a completely new concept to you, the best thing is we sit down together shortly and go through the examples together. But pretty straightforward, as they've done here. It's about plugging in the numbers. Along with your PowerPoints, you got 3 emails from me? Three emails. 3 Excel charts. I tried to make very simple templates that you could use plugging in the numbers. We could look at those too.
Can we use different ones?
Yeah, absolutely. Absolutely. It's up to you. Yep. I only sent what I thought would be easy examples to use. Cash flow. So in managerial finance, you look at cash flow. Yes, question. Say again? Yes, you should have an income statement. You should have a cash flow. You should have a balance sheet. Okay? Did you look at cash flows in managerial finance?
No.
Okay. Okay. So cash flow. Oh, everyone's getting excited now. Cash flow is basically a record of the money coming in and the money going out. Cash flow and income statement are not the same thing. You can have an income of $1 million and a cash balance, a closing cash balance of a negative number, right? Because a lot of your sales could have been on credit cards and there's nothing in the till. So you're showing still having a high profit, but you actually have no money. And lots of companies, in fact, have gone bankrupt because they have too many receivables, too many promises to be paid, where clients have defaulted, or they just run out of money, or in fact they can't even borrow anymore. Okay? That's why cash flow, in fact, is so important, and as I like to say, cash is the lifeblood of the business, or cash is king. For the ladies, we can say cash is queen, I guess, but cash is so important. All right. So help me out here. Where does the money come from? Okay, yeah, usually sales. All right. Now, in your cash flow statement, you may choose to break your sales revenue down into 2 separate line items. Instead of just calling it sales, you may choose to call it cash sales and receivables. And receivables, of course, is the collection of past, basically, credit card payments. Okay? Or, if you're in some sort of a business where you're invoicing somebody, basically receivables, promises of people that owe you money. Okay? For the business plan, if you want to keep your life simple, just one line, sales revenue. Okay? But cash sales revenue. All right? The money that's come in. If you want to get a little more creative, then give yourself an estimate. What percentage of your sales do you expect are going to be cash, and what percentage do you think are receivables? Let's say you go 70% cash, 30% receivables. So what you'll need to do is look at your income statement and say, oh, look at that. We had sales of $500,000 this month. 70% of that, cash sales, $350,000 for, say, January. What about my receivables? Well, my receivables are 30% of the previous month. I need to go back and look at December and see what would I expect for December's 30% of 600,000, 200,000 to be. Okay? So if you want to get a little more involved. Again, and for those of you who think you're going to open a real business, I'd say go for that. Because that'll give you a better idea of the cash flows coming in and going out. Any other places that money could be coming in? Well, at the very beginning of a cash flow, the very first month, you would have starting cash and sources from different funders that you put in the money yourself. Yeah. So unfortunately, money in only usually comes from one place, sales. What about money going out? Okay, all those expenses that we looked at?
Operation.
Yep. Basically, you put into three categories. General expenses, right? The cost of goods sold, right? The cost to make your products, or your variable costs. If you are selling something, you either might have at the top cost of goods sold or inventory. You know, any inventory you're buying. And then the other big outflow of money, of course, is any loan that you're paying back. That would be a big example. Question?
Depreciation.
Say again?
Depreciation.
No. Depreciation would not go on cash flow.
We're not going the money out. We're not going the money out.
Unless you have an account that you're setting aside, putting money into it, no. Because again, if you're depreciating your equipment, right, it's just sitting over there getting older. The money's not actually going anywhere, is it? Is it?
But depreciation is about of cash flow.
Adjustments.
Say that again?
Depreciation is part of cash flow.
Not if it's not money going out, it's not, no.
It's in the income.
Depreciation would be in the income statement, yes. Okay? But unless you're actually paying the money for it, because it's like this, you got your bank balance, right? At the end of the month, there's that much money in there. You should be able to go back and account for all the reasons the money's gone in, the money's gone out. Okay?
So if there is money for maintenance, for example, that's where
That would be
goes
money
in
out,
cash.
yes.
Yeah.
Is that what you meant by the depreciation through something like maintenance or repairs? Okay. So normal operations, anything related to investment or sale of assets, you're selling or buying, and financing, paying back your debts. Or if for some strange reason you've lent someone else money, I guess. Generally speaking, for the sake of the cash flow statements you're going to make, we're focusing on the top here, cash flow from operations. Okay? Money going in from general business, money going out. Okay? And gave an example here. Okay. You start the month with a $200,000 cash balance. You have cash sales of $100,000. Therefore, cash coming in is now $300,000. You also collect $50,000 of receivables from the previous month. What's our cash in? $350,000. Okay. At the same time, money that goes out: $10,000, $20,000, $50,000, $30,000. Where's the guy good at the numbers?
110,
How much has gone out altogether?
240. It's
To
going up 110.
110. Great. 350 minus 110.
240.
I need one of those pens to write down over here. They didn't give me a pen. That's the problem. So you have a cash balance at the end.
240.
240? That sounds about right. All right. If your closing balance for January is 240, what is your opening balance for February?
240.
240, right? So if you have the if you take a look at the okay, so here's the simple cash flow that I sent. You'll see the first column over here, pre-start. What's your opening balance? How much you started the business with? People have been invested. Okay, that adds up. That gives you a total number down here. The cells are linked. Okay, so whatever your closing is down here for month 1, that becomes your opening for 2. Okay, money in. Anything you put these numbers here will add up the total money available. Money out. Okay, give the total money out and give you the balance. And it really is as simple as that. Money that comes in, money that goes out. Where it gets interesting is, if you want to think about it a little further, is think about the nature of your business. Do you expect to have regular, steady cash flow all the way through? Or is it seasonal? Are there going to be certain times of the year where you'll do more business, and therefore you'll have more cash coming in? Because in some situations, if you have regular employees, they're going to want to get paid every month. They're not going to care that sales are low. So if it's like a hotel in Kuwait, for example, I'm sure the sales go down in the summer, but the employees still expect to get paid, right? So there, you're probably going to have a situation where you're negative cash flow. And then nicer types of the year, of course, the cash flow will go up and you'll have a cash surplus. So again, that might be the sort of thing that you choose to write about when you do your cash flow. So remember, just like when you did your other numbers, or you did your SWOT analysis, and you were talking about opportunities and threats and weaknesses, same sort of thing. Summarize it. You know, this is our cash flow for the first year of our business. As you can see, we will have negative cash flow for the first 3 months, and then we will make money. Then in this month here, we expect sales to be low, we will have negative cash flow. However, we will end the year in this situation. Just give some sort of a general summary comment about what's going on, and if there's anything that somebody might not understand, put some comment in there to explain why it is the way it is. Okay?
Use this as the same template?
I'm saying you could use this tablet, yes. Okay. So again, how will you know where your cash flow is coming from? What are your sales? What are your cash sales? And how much money are you going to borrow to start the business with?
It's all dependent on the forecast, of course.
Yes, this is all a forecast, right? So
This one's forecast.
say again?
This is a forecast.
No, you have to do a forecast.
Ah, okay.
The cash
So,
flow, so you
exactly.
know
So
how
this
much
is
you're gonna bring in.
when we use that as a report,
Yeah.
is it we can use it also as well?
No, you must use it.
It's hard.
See, well, income statement P&L are interchangeable. People use those two.
Exactly. This is what I'm
Yeah.
getting confused.
Yeah. Profit and loss statement, income statement, same thing. So in terms of order, what I would do your income statement first, because that'll give you an idea of sales. Okay? You can, if you want to keep your life simple, make it all cash sales, though that is a little unrealistic. And then that'll give you an idea of how much money's coming in. You then transfer it over here. Expenses, you can transfer your expenses over as well, the ones that you actually pay for. Okay? In and out. And remember, net income and cash very often are different numbers. Question, Jen?
So the income statement comes first, then
Yeah,
cash flow.
income statement first, because that gives you an idea of your sales.
Balance sheet.
We'll talk about that in a second. Any other questions about the cash flow before we? The balance sheet's the one I actually recommended leaving out, but that's why I was so glad people said you've done something with, you've done balance sheets, right? Yeah, okay. Because I thought, wow. Well, I mean, if you think about it, a lot of MBA courses, you spend like a month or months learning a balance sheet. To try to do it in like half an hour is... Anyway, fortunately, as with the requirements of this assignment, do you have a balance sheet? Does it add up? Does it seem to make sense? Tick. Can I go on?
Yeah.
Yep, question.
What is required is the income statement plus the cash statement. This
And
is
the-
what is required.
No, and the balance sheet.
For the business plan, you have to.
Yes. For the business plan, you should have cash flow. Start from the beginning. Income statement, cash flow, balance sheet. P&L and income statement are the same thing.
Now we will go for balance sheet.
Okay? Okay, so here we talk about preparing a cash budget. Preparing a cash budget is the same, you can sort of meld it in together with the cash flow. Preparing a cash budget is basically saying, well, how much cash are we going to need? And when are we going to need it? Again, from your cash flow, you can basically say at the beginning of the start of your business, we need to borrow this much money. Even if you're not going to spend it all, you might be borrowing from it for the first year, bit by bit by bit. Or, you remember when I showed you the cash flow, there were many lines. So you could have sales, you could also have a line for line of credit, and the different months where you need to borrow, then just show that in those specific months. Again, if you want to play with this after the break and show me, I can say you're on the right track, or this is right, this is not right. Okay? Why do we do this? Why do we do a cash flow, right? A projected cash flow? Well, because cash is king. A lot of companies like to have a minimum balance. It helps with your idea of forecasting sales, and also how much money's coming in, and where the money's going out, when the money's going out. Okay. How much will you have at the end? It's amazing. I worked for a restaurant one time. It was a great restaurant. It was so popular, but at the end of every month they had problems paying their staff. And someone said, "Look, there's two things that'll kill a restaurant: food poisoning and rumors that they can't pay the staff." Why couldn't they pay the staff? All this money was coming in, but as quick as the money was coming in, it was going out to pay the suppliers. And the suppliers weren't willing to give 30 days or 60 days or 90 days billing. Why? Because it was a new restaurant. They didn't know if they'd pay or not. So what happened is the investors in it had to float more money into the business. So again, you could be highly successful, but not actually have any cash. Okay, this point here, just this last, if you were looking at your sales and how much sales you're going to have, if you want to be really creative, you could do the three options. You could say, okay, maybe start with the optimistic one first. If everything goes right, the economy's great, then this will be the best case scenario. Then you could do a worst case scenario and the one that you think is the most likely. Because again, if you're pitching to people for money, and they're saying, well, how do you know it'll work out like that? You can say, well, actually, this is what I think will happen, but if it doesn't quite happen, here's what we would do if it didn't go quite right. We wouldn't make $1 million, we'd make 100,000. Or we would lose, and we'd have to borrow more money. So when you can show someone that you've actually thought it through, these different scenarios, it's more impressive, and it gives them more peace of mind. Okay, the balance sheet. Again, you've told me most of you get the balance sheet. Assets equal liability plus owner's equity. Yes, we're cool with that? Okay. What I'll basically say, if anyone doesn't understand the balance sheet, let's just work on it one-on-one. It's a lot easier than with a diagram than trying to explain. But basically, the principle of double entry accounting, these are all just examples of what makes it up. I'm just going to go to the slide. Okay. If you're unfamiliar with balance sheets, the most important thing you need to know about a balance sheet, the balance sheet has to balance. The accounting equation is assets, an asset, anything of value, has to equal the total of all the money that you owe and equity, who has what in the business. Well, how does that work? Well, imagine it's the very first day of the business, and you start up by the business by somebody deposits 100,000 cash in the business. Our cash is 100,000. Someone has put in 100,000 of equity. 100,000 equals 100,000. Okay. You buy 50,000 of products from another company. They deliver them. You got 50,000 up here. Now your assets equal 150,000. But you haven't paid them from them yet. So you have something called account payable of 50,000. 150,000 equals 150,000. So bottom line is, anytime anything gets changed on the, well, no, I shouldn't say that, should I? Bottom line is your total for your assets equal your total for your liabilities and equity side. Okay? What happens when you get sales and you get profit? Well, sales and profit are probably going to increase your cash. It's also going to increase down here your retained earnings. If you're doing a golden default rule, if you're doing a balance sheet and something doesn't add up here and here, it's probably because you've got retained earnings that you haven't recognized. So to make it balance, this is the number you do with it. Okay? I mean, check. Give it a half an hour to check the different cells where you might have made a mistake, but very often it's because you haven't transferred the cash over into retained earnings there. All right? Now, if you've never understood or seen a balance sheet, the first thing you should do is go back and read those slides because it talks about what these different accounts mean. And after the break, I'm happy to sit down with you and walk you through in more detail. But as I see a lot of people, as I start to talk, they're kind of, it's not new. Doesn't make sense for me to explain it all to you. We'll explain it in a one-on-one situation. Last thing, before we take a break. Have you done break-even analysis? Okay.
Operation.
Break-even,
With
you can look at it
financial
two ways.
management,
You
what-
could look at the break-even cost for an individual
Financial
product,
management,
or you can look at
what-
break-even for the total sales, which is more realistic, of course, because most companies sell more than one thing. We identify our variable expenses. Variable expenses. How are variable expenses different than cost of goods sold? Here's the question of the hour.
Variable expense, it's not a fixed expense, it's changing with the operation itself. Like laborers,
Wages.
Salaries, all of these things, it's like sort of variable expenses.
Those are all fixed expenses. Yep.
Do they include implicit expenses?
Say again.
Implicit
Like raw
expenses.
materials?
Illicit expenses, it's like opportunity cost. It's not included in accounting. And illicit cost, it's like opportunity. Accounting doesn't recognize opportunity cost.
But salary and wages are fixed.
Yeah, no,
They're fixed.
it's not fixed.
Oh, I don't
No,
know.
Jen. A lot. Most. It's actually a good point because a lot of people want to include salaries and wages as part of variable costs, but most companies don't hire and fire every month. So a lot of companies will include salaries as fixed costs because they don't change with the sales. But it's a controversial one. In accounting, controversial. Question.
Cost of goods is mostly linked to a product itself,
Cost of goods is mostly linked to a product, yes.
but variable not necessary to be linked with the product because we can consider that transportation as a variable. But cost of goods, like when we say a raw material, it's linked to the goods itself.
Okay. So two things you said in there were correct. Cost of goods we usually talk about with products as opposed to services. Okay. So, and then you said transport.
Transport of goods.
So transport is another example of a variable cost. So to come back to my original question is what's the difference between cost of goods and variable costs? Cost of goods, as we've said, is usually the cost to make an item, right? Everyone's cool on that.
Yeah.
But variable costs are also costs associated with the production and sale of something like transportation or
Service.
if you are insuring the goods when you ship them, yeah, that might be an example, yeah. The other big one, the two big ones that are additional variable costs, transportation and shipping, and commissions, any sales costs. So if you have to pay commissions or something like that, or there's a special administration cost associated with the sale of an item, that would be another variable cost. Okay? Make sense? That's the difference between cost of goods sold, what does it cost to make the item? Okay?
And that's why some companies consider take the salaries or the wages variable because they're including the commissions. So that's why they say it's a variable.
Mm.
And where the other companies they say it's cost, it's a fixed cost because they separate the commission from the basic salary.
Hmm.
So here's why other companies say this is the salaries is variable or fixed.
The commission, yes. But I think most companies in the world have salaries as fixed costs. Because again, they don't say, guys, stay home today, we're not going to be that busy, right? It's a given cost. Now, when you get into things like job costing in managerial accounting, did you do that? Then that's a whole different concept altogether, where you definitely look at the cost to make something. The calculation, as you can see here, basically telling us that 26% of every item will go towards paying the fixed costs. So if these are our fixed costs that we have to pay, 26% is the ratio of items, then we need to have this much in sales just to break even. But I'm telling you something you already know, right? Okay. Now let me tell you something you don't know. Yes, question.
The break-even points, we use it for what?
Anyone want to answer that?
Yeah, know exactly when we are going to cover our costs and then start making profit.
Yeah, how much sales do you need to generate to pay all your bills? Because remember, most companies have two types of costs. Variable, the cost of producing the item, and then fixed costs, how do we keep the lights on and keep the building open and pay the rent and all those other things. So there must be some number in terms of how much sales we need to actually stay in business, to stay at least at zero, break even. Didn't make anything, didn't lose anything. Because you might say to yourself, hey, look at this, like Starbucks, coffee, so cheap to make, so cheap. But, right, the cost of running the Starbucks is just not the cost of that cup of coffee, it's the cost of paying the baristas and the electricity and all those other costs. So then you say to yourself, okay, we know we've got a really high contribution margin ratio on our coffee and our products, but how much do we actually need to sell so that we don't lose any money? And that's how you use this ratio here. You say, okay, well, we take the cost of our rent, cost of our electricity, cost of our labor, and we divide it by our contribution margin ratio. That'll say, okay, we need to have approximately this much money in sales every month just to break even. Okay? Now, the other thing you can do, if you only have one item, if you have a uniform item, then you can do contribution margin per unit, and you can calculate how many items you need to sell, as opposed to total sales. But again, most businesses in the world sell mixed number of things, and that's why you use the dollar ratio as opposed to the unit ratio. Make sense?
Yes, it makes sense. For the variable costs,
Yep.
in the stage of the startup, you cannot do all the variable costs with the existing, virtually existing, the real field.
Yeah.
So we should merge with this number or something.
No, this would be an additional thing that you could do to impress yourself. Okay, figure out what you think the break even would be. This is additional information to include. I mean, there's all sorts of financial ratios you can include. This is a pretty straightforward one that'll help you get an idea of where you're breaking even. But as you said, you're not going to know all your variables. You're not going to know anything when you start, right? Everything's an estimate. You're estimating sales. You're estimating fixed costs. You're estimating variable costs. Yes. Okay. All right. It is 5 after 4. Why don't we take a 10-minute break? Okay. Come back at 4:15, and then we'll continue. A lot of things that you've studied in your other classes before. What we talked about this morning was very much about that spark of life, identifying ideas and bringing them to life. If I were you, the next step would be to go to the bplans.com, register, get access to their massive database of business templates. Now, you could just do any search on Google, business template, and they'll show you. What's nice about the bplan.com is they've actually got templates for different industries. So if you were looking to do something in education, there's a template there. How different are they from other templates? Well, you'll get to see examples of what people have done. You'll get to see where people have included, other little bits of information. But that's a good place to begin. You had me here until 6 o'clock, all right? And I will stay till 6 o'clock. I know some people have to run, and I'm not going to force you to stay and put you in a headlock and make you stay or anything like that. But I'm basically putting myself at your disposal. If there are specific things, like especially the financials, that you want some help with, happy to do it. If you want to check out the B plans, you want to start writing down some ideas, you want to just bounce ideas off each other, now's the time to do it. Okay? So it's, as I would say, independent study type of thing right now. Question in the back?
Do you have an example of a business plan that we can go briefly?
Yes. Yes? I'll say yes. Okay. Other questions before we do that?
An example of the income
Break even?
statement, balance
budget sheet?
Mm,
Oh,
but
Can we do like?
he
One
wants a
together?
black
Yeah,
exam.
we could sit in a group and do one as opposed to with everyone. Sure, absolutely. Okay, sure. I'll show you a business plan I have in here. Like I said, it's not the Bible or the Quran or anything like that, right? It's not the be all and end all. Like I said, there's hundreds of different examples. And it's not my business plan, if you're wondering. All right. So here's a business plan someone in Dubai made.
Can you send it to us?
I can't send you. I'll ask Miss Fatima if she'll send this to you. Okay? She said I could share it with you, but she'll have your emails on file, right? It'll be easier for her to send it to you. But she might just say go on bplans.com and check other ones. So, not sure. All right. Nice attractive title page. Nice attractive table of contents. You can see this one runs about 28 pages. Let me make that bigger there. Yes, sir. Question?
What we will do on the exam date?
There is no exam.
Okay, on that date.
That's the deadline to have your work submitted.
Okay, only we will submit it. We will not discuss it. We will not.
Correct. So yeah, there's no presentation or anything like that.
Okay.
We just go to.
We will just
Email it.
Email.
Yeah.
before the exam date, before the defined date. I mean. Okay.
Okay, so this example here, the executive summary, vision and mission, business description, obviously they describe the business, then specifically the product description, market analysis, who their segment is, market growth, how they plan to grow, a SWOT analysis, who their main competitors are, their marketing strategy, their financial plan, and their contact information.
You don't need to add references.
What kind of references?
Like if I refer to some kind of website link or
Oh, well, we'll see when we get there. There might be, yeah.
no, I mean, is it a must?
You-
Otherwise, I can just copy and paste anything online.
Well, a lot of students do that anyway, oddly enough. Not that I'm encouraging it.
How are you going to get it down?
You might run it through SafeAssign or something like that. Oh,
Yeah,
yeah.
I use the other thing, you know.
But this is an already established company.
I don't know. They might have just made it up themselves. It looks established, but they might have just made it up themselves.
So you can use this format, so you can do it the same way as if you have an established company.
Oh yeah.
You can do that.
Well, it says here established in 2015 October to promote. It's just saying they're, it could be they're starting or they want to start, right? It's the beginning of the company. So here, executive summary. What I like about this, remember I talked about the organization? You see the title, you see the use of bullet points. Okay. I think it's almost a little too big for an executive summary, but that's just me. Objectives, they talk about the objectives of the company. That's something we didn't talk about in here. You can include that, but
It's more like a mission as well.
yeah, it's a little feel good. This is what we're doing about. Vision and mission. Again, the use of the bullet points is nice. Business description. They talk about what their business is like. They talk about some specific services within the business. See, again, for me, you see this paragraph here? That's getting a little bit too big. And just because I'm anal about things, they've only justified it on the left. It looks more professional if you actually justify on both sides, but that's just the old English teacher in me coming up. Product description and features, again, because they're a travel business, it's sort of a natural fit to describe what the experiences would be. That's why these ones here would be a little longer than you might have. If you're selling coats, your product description would probably be would not be that long. Market analysis summary, they're basically talking about Well, their market analysis. Who are they selling to? And in this case, they're talking about being located in Dubai. Why Dubai is great. How many people live in Dubai? They don't get, as somebody was asking earlier, they don't get into talking about penetration rates or anything like that, I don't think. But remember how I talked earlier about length being important? Like not garbage length, but it shows that they're talking about some stuff. It shows that they made an effort, right? It shows that they thought about it. Market segmentation. Who would be their clientele?
Should we send it Microsoft Word or PDF?
I think neither matters. Either or. Yeah. I don't think that's a big deciding factor. Unless your file's really big and making it a PDF makes it smaller.
Unless the idea is valid. Actually, the one.
Basic sales forecast. Again, this is nice because they've taken something that would be part of the income statement and they've isolated it out, so it's easy to read, easy to see. Market growth. Why the first bullet points here, just why they think the market's growing in general. They're talking specifically about shipping to Sri Lanka, so they got some numbers on the Sri Lankan tourist industry. Market needs. It's kind of interesting. We talked earlier about needs. Well, nobody needs to go to Sri Lanka, but the tourist industry overall. They talk a little bit about strategy and implementation, summary, brand, some marketing. Yeah, those are ideas they would have picked up from a template they used. Their SWOT, you can see here they didn't do it in a chart, which is actually, I think they include a chart later on, but here they use it in paragraph or short point form. And yes, competitors, lots of information. Again, this is where I would rather see a chart. Be easier to read, be quicker to read. They use some numbers. People like numbers, they like statistics. So you'll see statistics coming up in here. How you'll position? Yeah, you could. You could in the marketing, in the competition section. How you're positioning yourself compared to the others. I wouldn't say you have to, but I'd say that would be a nice thing to include. How you see yourself fitting in. Just some marketing. Here's the 4 Ps. Sales strategy. Here they give an overall management structure. Again, I know this is from a template that they've seen. This is one of those things I say would be optional, especially when you're starting out. If you're like a 2 or 3 person organization, but if you're going to have employees, yeah, you could do a breakdown like this. Management team, they talk about who the people are. Personal plan, they're talking about how much they're going to pay people. Financial plan, again, some description to go along with the charts. And here they're showing money they're investing themselves, plus getting a loan from the bank. Startup expenditures. Sales forecast, how much they think they're going to have. It's basically taking your numbers, putting it in an Excel spreadsheet. Makes it look nice, doesn't it? Necessary? No. Looks nice? Yeah. Helps to tell a story, right? Assumptions, that's quite a nice thing to include. What assumptions are they making for their sales forecast? Here we have a comparison of sales expenses and gross margin. Again, just taking information from the income statement and using it to tell a story. Break-even analysis. They decided to put into a chart. Okay. Profit and loss. Again, they translated into charts.
How many marks this guy?
I believe this was an A paper. Okay. This was definitely one of the top papers. Okay. Here's your profit and loss / income statement in more detail. Yep.
Is there any marking criteria? I mean, how are you going to give us the marks? Like, yes or no?
Right. The short answer, I'm not the one that does the marking. The markers, as with all your other assignments, do the marking. I did ask that question. I did say, are there certain things that you'd like me to stress, and are there certain things that I even said, look, would you like me to say, include these things in your business plan, right? So I said, if I was a student, I'd want to know, do I include this? Do I have to include, kind of like what you guys are asking. And the answer I got each time was, just go to bplans.com. There's lots of examples. So in terms of criteria, what I would say, and I'm not trying to avoid the question here. It should show effort, if you know what I mean by that, right? Like, I think when you look at this, it shows effort. It goes beyond the obvious. So they've taken things like the numbers from their income statements, and they've made some little charts around them, things like that. It doesn't look like a last-minute job. It flows nicely. We say, like, it sort of tells a story. It starts out with, this is the concept, this is how it would work. It doesn't show, like, just excess stuff that's thrown in there with, garbage space being left around, that sort of thing. So I know where your question is coming from. The short answer would be no, I can't give you anything else other than we talked about that length, that 25 to 50, page length seems like a good length to have. Including the things that we've talked about, make sure you include. If you want to get a great mark, this is like, the good thing, no final exam. The bad thing, it has this sort of ambiguity about how much you put into the business plan should reflect where the mark tops out at. Is that a barely satisfactory answer? You can say barely, that's fine. Okay.
I have a question.
Yes.
How reasonable is it to ask for a business plan from someone who doesn't have background or have ever made a business plan, and to cover all these topics or whatever in 4 weeks
Mm-hmm.
and get a mark on it?
Right.
What is expected?
Right. Well, I would say it's sort of the nature of the MBA you've taken, right? Like, by logic, you're spending 1 day to learn what some people spend 4 weeks on, or some people spend 4 months on,
Yeah.
right? You're doing a condensed MBA. Therefore, I'd say the expectations of the business plan that you're having to produce for this would be less than what someone might be doing in the 4-week version or the 4-month version.
But if this is the example that you're sharing, this looks like someone that's done it like a zillion times. It flows, like you said, it makes sense. It's,
I'd say it comes down to 2 things. Number one, they found a template, right? They found someone else's example and said, okay, that's what they did. Let's plonk in our own information now. That's part of it. And part of it is, I remember when I was in school, some people were happy to pass. Some people wanted to shoot for the stars, right? Some people, it might have been a little 5% assignment, but they wanted to spend hours and hours on it. So. Do you know what I mean?
Yes.
Okay.
Do you think we ask for like market expectations to achieve?
Marking criteria? You could. Yeah, you could.
you have graphs or papers.
Other question or comment?
I have a specific question.
Yep.
About the forecast of sales.
Yes.
How do you do that?
Okay, good question. The question was, how do we forecast our sales? Any answers for that? We have to, okay. But how could we go around with where do we begin or where do we start type of thing with forecasting the sales? Yep.
If you are an existing company or taking the year-to-date sold and then adding up your supply chain, what are you buying for this year, and then put an extra profit for that, or like let's say you make percentage, you made last year profit or 35%, you want to make it up like 40 or something, and then you are trying hard to reach it. Not
Yes.
every time you are reaching there, but
Yes.
and then you put all the factors of your company to work towards that target.
Yes.
This is in case of an old or an established
Exactly.
company.
Right.
What about the
If
new?
it's- Right, initial.
Well, it's a startup. It's going to be a startup amount that you will need to put and work around it. So how much do you think you, in your mind, when you do your business plan, about the business that you select on doing, in your mind, when you do the income statement and all your costs, how do you think you're going to make sales? How many? How many sales? Yani, how much sales are you going to make during, مثلا, this year?
Okay, so okay, how are you going to know part of it's going to come from the research? So remember we talked about target market, right?
Yes.
All right, so we've identified our target market, we've identified possible penetration, and at some point you got to choose a number, right? At some point you got to say, okay, I think we can sell this many this month. Now, if it was real world situation, all sorts of research you can do on existing people in sales, it's out there, but at some point you got to say, okay, I think we can sell X amount this month. And I'd say for the business plan, don't get hung up on is this right or is it wrong. Okay, don't get hung up on that. And it's probably better to err on the side of small than on the side of big. If when you're doing your sales forecast, you find out after like a year and a half, 2 years, you still haven't made any money, right? Then probably you've underestimated your sales or you've identified a business that's like a bad idea. Okay, if you just don't see yourself by the third year starting to make money or narrowing the gap. So start out with some number that you think after a year, but once you identify the item that you're selling and then how many units you think you can move, one great piece of advice I heard one time is if you wanted to start a business, let's say you want to be a carpenter, all right, the best thing to do is talk to other carpenters. Now, the carpenters in your town probably don't want to talk to you because you're competition. So what do? You get out the phone book, you get out the internet, and you find out a carpenter 3 hours away. Why? Because you're not his competition. Hi, I'm so-and-so, I live 3 hours away. I'm thinking about going to the carpentry business. Do you mind if I ask you a few questions? And you know what? People love to talk about themselves, so they'd probably say yes. All right, so in terms of market research, getting an idea, that's one of the best things you can do. Call someone who does what you do, but is not within your geographical area.
And the business plan, you can revise it after 1 year. I mean, you can.
That's right.
Picture will be more clear.
That's right.
You can change it.
Other questions? Again, there's sort of the two parallel thoughts of what do we need to do for the plan and what do we need to do for life, right? So, yeah. But like I said, great piece of it. I mean, now that we've covered all this information today, right? You're probably feeling overwhelmed and feeling a little stuffed. Yes, no?
Yes.
I mean, not just stuff from lunch. I mean, the head stuffed with all the information is going back, like I said, tomorrow, some point, or later tonight after you've had a chance to relax, go to bplans.com. And the only reason I'm emphasizing bplans.com over other business templates is, as I said, bplans.com has examples of business plans broken down by specific industries. So you can see what other people have done. And it is, choose that. What is a template? A template is something you look at to then fill in with your own ideas. So it's big. Like I keep joking about, you can't leave this till February 3rd, right? But chunk it and work away in it bit by bit by bit.
Yeah, but don't take it directly from the internet.
No, definitely don't do that. All right. So could I then say, I'll say two things. First, why don't we then spend the next hour, for those that have to go, very nice to meet you. If I run into you again, that'll be super. I've enjoyed myself today. The time's gone by a lot quicker than I thought. For people who would like to stay and talk about anything specific, I'll be happy to come around. For people that want to stay and talk to other people, I'd recommend doing that too. Maybe a good thing to do would be to jump on the B-Plan's website right now and start to dig around and make sure you can find what you're looking for. Okay? And yeah, question before I... Yeah? Sure. Okay. P. Cleaver. Write this down. I'll put it up here.
To whom shall we address the business plan?
هذا البورد
The business plan you're submitting to the MBA program, right?
examination board.
The email should be there.
ها؟
فاطمة.
Yeah, Miss Fatima, right?
اللي بعد
ولكن اللي بعثت الإثكس وين بعثت الإثكس؟ بعتنا ايميل وسلم بالايد كيف يعني؟ كيف بعتوش ايميل؟ بعتها كانت حصيطة هاي
To the question about marketing criteria, though, I mean, it's a very good question, and there's some things where, like I'm doing right now, I hesitate to say something because I thought, well, I'm not the one marking it, so I'm making somewhat educated guesses. So by all means, it's a very valid question to say, you know, can we ask Ms. Fatima if she can give us any criteria? Because I did ask, and I think I got lost in a number of other questions I was asking her, so I never got a straight answer on that.
Yeah, we have the complex. I'll leave it like this or more.
Okay? Yeah, you wanted to see the rest of the business plan? Can I take this down, guys? Okay, so their projected cash flows. Okay, so they did 3 years. You've got the cash from sales. Now you can see they did not break it down into cash sales and receivables. It's just one big number, assuming everything's cash, just to make your life easier. Okay, then you have the money going out. Long-term liabilities, whatever they've decided that is. Cash spending, bill payments. Again, these are very general terms they've used. They didn't include an appendix later on saying what they are. And then finally, they got a net cash flow of $10,000 by the end of the first year. So they had a little bit of money left over. So this is very much like a summary cash flow, as opposed to a breakdown of all the different expenses they were thinking on. So if you were to do the template I sent you, for example, for cash flow for each month, you might have a line like rent, and every month the rent would probably be the same, unless you're paying it month 12. Salaries, insurance, if you have monthly insurance or what. Here they've just grouped them together. Bill payments is actually quite ambiguous. Projected balance sheet. Okay. Interesting how they choose to put it together. But you've got your assets, and then you've got your liabilities. And then they put the team in here. Now, I can only recognize one of the people on here, so...
I think they do it as a group.
This is a group one, huh?
It was definitely a group one, yes.
That's why it's
That's
so
why
much
it's
more than
a lot of ideas.
What they do in the... One of the things they do in the Sharjah, I don't think I'm telling any company secrets, I think 50% of their mark is for the business plan, and 50% of the mark is for each individual person has to do a presentation on the same topic. Or it might even be 40-60. Okay? Yeah. So if you're asking them questions, if you're asking questions and you wanted to say, Mr. Paul showed us an example in class of the Sri Lanka travel business plan, we noticed that had 6 people in it. Would you expect the same amount of work from one person? Would be a legitimate question. Okay. Again, there's things I like about that business plan. There's things I don't like about that business plan.
Yes,
All right. There's as many business plans as there are students in the class, and different types and approaches. Even within some of the different documents, there's like their balance sheet. I found a little archaic and confusing. Okay. It's about more than anything I can say. It's about effort, guys. It's about the effort that you put in.
And the amount of your understanding. So
Sure.
see that you really understand what you're talking about.
Okay. So like I said, well, I mean, you were free to go at any time today. I'm not holding anyone back like your school teacher. But like I said, it's just gone 5 o'clock. I'm happy to stay here and work with anyone on anything until 6. Okay. Thank you.
Thank you very much.
See you again. And good luck, guys. Good luck with everything. Good luck with Leicester MBA.